So I spent a bit of time in between videos and just setting up a very quick basic layout for some of these branches I want having on my bonsai tree. Now, oh, I have to do the whole way. There we go. Now, obviously, it doesn't look the same, perfectly the same, because obviously these have more sub branches. If we look really closely, as close as we can get in, we can see that these have a lot of branches coming off them. So what I would say is stylize the tree a little bit. I mean, we still do a lot with the, still do as much as you can, but you don't have to go into as much detail as this, because this is obviously, there are probably thousands of branches on this one little tree, so we don't necessarily have to do all of this. Just like choose main sprigs and yeah, don't go into super small detail, but still, I'm looking at this and I'm trying to like visually kind of make out almost like clumps of these leaves, and actually looking at what the general layout of this of the tree is, because some of them will droop quite a lot. Like the actual leaves will be weak enough that actually droop. Some will, that I've seen, will come out like almost like a flat horizontal angle, and then some like this seem to then go up. They'll grow up out of the trees. Very strong. I mean, so what I've done is I've made one. I've thought about the basic geometric shape of those little clumps, and I've made this one little shape which I have unwrapped. Unwrapped here. So I might have 4 or 5 different variations of leaves on that same. So if I just do, so I've got 5 little clumps there. So then I might just, you know, you'd obviously you'd lay them out better on your texture sheet, but I have 5 variations of leaf groups I can have. So I can have, you can make this one, this first one very small, and have a few little, the same relative size to each other, but they can be very small leaf groups. And then this one, so you might have one really small, and then, you know, something like bigger and bigger and bigger, and this one really big, and this one the biggest. Now the leaves won't be smaller on this one and bigger on this one, there'll just be more leaves on this biggest one and fewer leaves on this first one. Shut up, phone. So that, and obviously that would translate onto these. So the biggest one would be the biggest UV, the smallest one would be the smallest UV shape. And then once you've got something like that laid out, I made a little clump of UV. So I kind of give a really rough, and you can go in and you can fix this later on if, when you apply your textures, they don't look quite right, you can go and fix these later on. But I've just gone in and made like little clumps, and you might like you might make 2 or 3 of these. So I've made like a little clump, a little shape of leaves that might, you know, might work on one of these branches. And what I've done is I've gone round and then just start putting them together into a few little shapes. So that's a really quick way of making these like sprigs, the plant stems, the plant leaves, like that. And what you can also do is, if you get a plane, shut up phone, and just cut that in, just put a couple of subdivisions in it so that it looks something like this. I've turned the grid off. There you go. You can then, if you really want to get some of these really small leaves in there, really small branches, you could then texture branches onto this. Obviously, these shapes here will have branch textures on them, because obviously the leaves need to be attached to something. So you'd paint some branches onto these panels for your transparency panels. But on these ones, on this one, you might want to do something like, or is it in this little group of branches here, where you've got a couple just sticking off. You don't need to make them in geometry. You can make them using just a little one of these, and then just paint your transparency map on there for your twigs. And that way you're not worrying about dragging loads of UVs out, loads of geometry out, and then having to UV it later on. You can just have this one little panel, and these can share the same space as your leaf UV layouts like these, and then you're just adding that little extra bit of depth onto this. And obviously, being games, we have to worry about polygon counts, so that's a really nice way of just controlling that, throttling that a little bit more. Cool. So that's the second video. It's really quick. We've gone over how to create these sort of things before, so I don't feel we necessarily need to go into a full video about this. But just remember your transparency setup. So your black and white image, black being transparent, white being opaque. That'll go into transparency channel of your. It'll go into there. It'll plug in just like any other texture. So obviously check the box, import the file, and then that'll activate your transparency map once you've activated the texture. Now, what will happen is you will get some weird sort of transparency things on your actual tree and the geometry around your scene. Maya isn't set up to handle transparency on the fly, so one thing I would say is just put that into Sketchfab and just start looking. Use Sketchfab as your output. Just check that the textures are actually working inside Maya, and then use Sketchfab as your final, like, is it actually working properly? If you don't want to do that, I think you should, but if you don't want to do that, if you go to Renderer, Viewpoint 2.0, Viewport 2.0, and click on the little option box, in Transparency Algorithm, if you drop Object Sorting and turn it Depth Peeling, that will that'll sort you out a little bit. It's not really, that can cause a few other issues, especially if you go into transparency. If you go into X-ray mode, sorry, that'll throw you a few little issues. So that's the second video. The next one, I'm just going to be going over how to actually subdivide and unwrap this guy, so that we don't have to. I'll show you an easy way of unwrapping that sort of stuff.